compete for the championship, and Weldon believes it's going to happen on the road and street courses. They think that they're going to be a much better team on courses like this one, and he's running strong, but still mid-pack at this point.
All right, let's take a look at the leaders down the front stretch here as we get ready to work lap 8 of 100. It is Scott Dixon in front, but look out.
Yes.
Pass for second.
Saw that coming out of 13-14, caught the draft at the right moment. Helio Castroneves now past Marco Andretti.
So, action up front has been fast and furious here in the streets of St. Petersburg. Now, due to the weather and the change of plans, we're not going to be able to bring you side-by-side today. Here comes your race leader at St. Petersburg. That is Scott Dixon. Right behind him is Helio Castroneves. And now dropping back a little bit further in third is Marco Andretti. We've had 3 different leaders and 2 lead changes. Let's talk about the calendar, because coming up next on ESPN2, the NHRA 4-wide Nationals. They got rained out yesterday. John and Ashley Force in the funny car final. That should be a dandy. And NASCAR Now Roundtable at 6 Eastern today. That's also on ESPN2. Then the NASCAR Nationwide Series moves on to Nashville next Saturday on ESPN at 3:30 Eastern. And the next IZOD IndyCar Series event, the Grand Prix of Alabama, Sunday, April 11th, 3 Eastern, over on Versus. Boy, Dixon's car looking very strong. And remember, Castroneves, he started 5th in this field, has now worked his way up to 2nd. A little bit further back now, all of a sudden, Marco seems to be losing contact with the lead pair.
His car was so good out of the box in the very first couple of laps, and maybe the reds that he has on there don't agree with the setup that he has for his combination of springs and shock settings. But right now, that car will probably improve for him when they switch over to the black tires, which he spent most of the weekend on.
A lot further back in the field, you see that everybody is pretty much running in line, although here it looks like Conway was trying to take a look underneath, didn't have enough room. And much further back in the field, we're trying to bring in there is Danica Patrick, as she is struggling right now mightily, as she started 21st and is running 22nd. What's going on, Jamie?
Well, Marty, this is her 6th start here, and this is usually one of her better road courses. She has 3 top 10s here, but that has not been the case today. She started out 21st. She started on blacks, one of the handful of drivers who did so. She just came on the radio moments ago and told her crew, I'm being too conservative back here. And she is. She slipped back 1 spot, and she's 30 seconds back from the leader.
So now the question begins to be asked, when do you pit? You pit early, hope to catch a caution, and then regain track position at that point. We'll wait and see. Meanwhile, Scott Dixon is clicking off the laps up front, Vince.
It's interesting. This is one of the racetracks that Scott Dixon has not won at, and for a guy who leads the IZOD IndyCar Series in career victories with 21, he's been a series champ twice. You'd think this is a track in which he would have won on before, but he's been 2nd a couple of times. And then you look at his results of the last 2 years, 16th and 22nd. Now, those haven't been because he's had bad cars necessarily, but just bad luck. So it's no surprise to see Scott Dixon and his Target Chip Ganassi racing team on the point here at St. Pete.
Well, you see where he's led 6 laps already today. We'll go back to last year. He led 51 laps at Mid-Ohio. He won that event, but then he only led 3 laps on the road courses the rest of the season. And he feels that that's the area where he cannot afford to give up the points like he did last year.
And he certainly is a driver that thinks about every racetrack that he goes to, and he knows that this one, as you mentioned, has to be an improvement if he's going to win the points championship.
Our first chance to talk about Simona Di Silvestro from Switzerland. She started 14th, has moved up 2 spots to 12th. Jamie, give us an update.
I'll tell you, she has been quite impressive. You remember back to the first race, her debut in the IndyCar Series in Brazil, she led 4 laps. That turned a lot of heads. I talked to her just before she got in the race car. They struggled a little bit when they unloaded, but she said this team has worked together and made the car so much better. That certainly has shown so far. She started 14th, already moving her way up. This is a very confident woman and somebody to keep your eye on.
And it's going to be fun to watch her development. And we look at this. It's Ryan Briscoe early into pit lane on lap 13 of 100, and he is going to the blacks.
A little slippery, as you mentioned, getting out of pit lane. This is going to be very treacherous. This little right-left combination, getting back onto the race course. And when these tires are cold, don't make a mistake on your out lap. The drivers tell me it takes at least 2 going on to maybe 3 laps to get these tires up to temperature where they start to have some grip.
Now remember, Briscoe started 19th, and we were talking about that go-off strategy, because now if a yellow comes out, he's already got fresh tires, fresh fuel, and everybody else will be falling in behind him. So we'll see if it plays out for Ryan Briscoe. Looking at whoever that was coming down there.
Sato. Now, I think in this scenario, excuse me, EJ Vizo, I would imagine that he might have a radio problem right now in that KV car, and what he's doing is driving towards the wall to give them an answer. And we'll have to check in with them to see if that's the situation. But generally, that's what you do as a driver. If you don't have any radio communications and you can't hear something back and forth, you just bring yourself over to the pit wall to let them know that you have a situation.
Dario Franchitti, remember he had that early spin on the first lap. Dario right there has gotten around Danica Patrick, and he has now turned the fastest lap of the race at a minute 4.7. Vince?
That's exactly right, and they just came over the radio. Barry Wanzer, who handles the strategy for Dario, and told him, you are the fastest one out there right now. Keep digging. Obviously, it's been an eventful weekend for Dario. He spun and had contact on Friday during practice. You noted, Marty, that he's already been around here in this race today, so digging out of a hole. But Barry Wanzer coaching him with positive feedback and how fast he is. There's a long way to go in the race, he told him. Still got to keep digging.
He is 21st right now. Danica running in 22nd. Ryan Briscoe in 23rd. We can tell you that Milka Duno has pulled into pit lane, and we're hearing that she has got some mechanical issues.
And you know, in the situation we just saw there, a few laps ago, the blue car with Dario Franchitti was behind Danica Patrick. He's now in front. And when you're having a situation like that where you don't think you're being aggressive, as was reported from Danica, when the other driver goes past you, try to get on that tailbox of that car and follow, and just to be more aggressive. She was not able to do that, because you can see the gap right now between Dario Franchitti and Danica Patrick.
All right, while she continues to try and figure out how to gain some speed on this 1.8-mile 14-turn layout, Scott Dixon's got all the answers right now as he's leading Helio Castroneves, Marco Andretti here in St. Petersburg. There's your race leader here at St. Petersburg, Scott Dixon, and he has opened up a bit of a margin now, a little over 2 seconds over second place, which happens to be Helio Castroneves. But the best battle is a little bit further back. Take a look at third and fourth, because you've got Marco Andretti under attack from Will Power, and he's taking a look down on the inside, heading into turn one, and he's got him, yes.
And that move was actually done back in the back section 4 through 9. Will caught up through the tight stuff and almost tried to do something in 10, and then made the pass going down the front stretch, which is the safe zone because of the width of the racetrack.
And you were saying during the break, it looks like Will's car is coming back to him.
Absolutely, you know, and give him credit for having the patience. Race car drivers are known for not being very patient when other cars are passing you. And in that scenario, he was very smart, because he knew his car would come back to him once the track started to change.
There is our current race leader. Let's check in on our Firestone lap leaders, and we'll be able to tell you that Scott Dixon has the most so far with 12, Will Power with 4, Marco Andretti with 1. You know, this is only the second race Scott Dixon has led at St. Pete. He led 36 laps in 2006, and he finished second that day to Helio Castroneves, the man who's tracking him down right now in second. There is Tony Kanaan. Kanaan currently running in the 5th position with Justin Wilson right behind him. And here we go. Take another look as you've got the Penske teammates going after each other, and Will Power takes over second place.
And there'll be no fight there because of the teammates and because it's early in the race. Otherwise, you would have certainly seen Vince Welch, Helio Castroneves make that a very hard pass for Will Power.
Well, and it's interesting, Scott, because Tim Cindric, who handles the strategy for Helio, had just come on the radio and told Helio that Power was coming and coming fast. So there was no surprise there, as he knew that Will Power had the fastest car between the two. And it's interesting, Power told me earlier in the weekend that he feels more comfortable now as part of the team as a full-time driver, and feels more comfortable recommending changes to the car that better suits his style. And he said, I think you're going to see a lot better performance and better results from me this year because of that comfort level. And Scott, as a former driver, you know, if the car's not quite right and you don't have the confidence to speak up about it all the time, it's going to make a big difference.
Certainly will, and he is a guy right now that I want to ask Tim Cindric what he thinks about him. He said his wheels are always in motion. All he thinks about is motorsports, Marty.
So as he comes down the front straightaway, let's go check in with Rick DeBrule. He's caught up with Alex Lloyd, who has just dropped out of the race.
Unfortunately, as a result of some suspension problems, but Alex is the first person we can talk to about what the track conditions have been like this morning from the start, and what's it like right now?
The track's okay. It was a little slippery to start with, but it really picked up grip pretty quickly. So, yeah, the dry, it's a little slippery, but it's fine.
What about lines? Do you have to work a different line, or will the regular racing line work?
No, not really. Everything's as